This happened last November. I was taking a train from London to a small town called Windermere. It's a quiet countryside spot where I used to live as a kid. It was one of those older models of trains where everything creaks slightly, and it moves and the windows are always cold to the touch no matter how high the heat is cranked. We were about 30 minutes from Windermere when the train started to slow. Outside, I saw the mouth of a tunnel, long, dark, and looming. I remember that detail vividly because right before we entered it, my phone buzzed in my coat pocket. Now here's the thing. I hadn't had service for about 15 minutes. I even tried sending a text earlier and it failed. So when I pulled my phone out and saw a new message, I was already confused. But it wasn't just the timing of the message that messed with me, it was the sender. The message was from me. My own number, identical. Same country code, same everything. And the message. It was short, just one line. Do not get off at the next stop. You don't come back. At first I laughed, thought it had to be some kind of glitch or prank. Maybe some kind of weird carrier error. But then the air changed. The lights flickered as we entered the tunnel. Dull hum of the train seemed to deepen, become more guttural. I looked around. No one else seemed to notice anything strange. A man 2 rows down was asleep, his head lolling slightly with the train's motion. A woman across the aisle was scrolling through her tablet, unfazed. I read the message again. My hands had started to sweat. That's when the phone buzzed again. Same number, same sender. I know you're reading this. Do not get off. This time I felt a cold knot twist in my stomach. My first instinct was to turn my phone off, but I didn't. I wanted to see what would happen. Something did happen. The tunnel outside wasn't just dark, it was silent. It's like the train had entered a void. No more rattling over tracks. It's no more mechanical whine, just this unnatural stillness. Even the other passengers weren't making a sound. The woman with the tablet, frozen mid-scroll. The sleeping guy, completely still now, no movement in his chest. It was like time had paused. Another buzz. I jumped. You're not supposed to see them. My hands were trembling now. I glanced up, and that's when I saw something. The window. Not my reflection, but figures. Dozens of them, standing in the tunnel just outside the train. Tall, thin, pale. Their eyes glowed faintly, not white, not yellow, gray. Like fog caught in headlights. They weren't moving, standing there watching the train pass. Then the lights cut out completely, pitch black. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face, couldn't see the phone screen, nothing. And in that total darkness I heard breathing, not mine, not normal breathing. Wet, raspy, inhaling all around me. Like these things had boarded the train. I couldn't scream, I couldn't move. I just sat there, heart pounding so loud I thought it would explode. Then the lights snapped back on. The train emerged from the tunnel. Everyone was in their seats like nothing had happened. The woman across from me blinked, scrolled again. The man was snoring softly, but something felt off. I checked my phone. All the messages were gone. No log, no record. Just the text I had tried to send earlier, still stuck, still unsent. The next stop was called Larkspur, a small countryside platform in the middle of nowhere. The conductor came over the intercom, next stop Larkspur. Larkspur in 5 minutes. I stood up. Every instinct told me not to, that I should stay. Ride it out. But I wanted answers. The message said, don't get off. But what if it was a prank? What if the fear had clouded my judgment? So I ignored it. When the train slowed to a halt, I stepped off. The platform was empty, not quiet. Empty. No station, no signs. Just trees and fog. I turned to ask the conductor how far Windermere was, but the train was already gone. No sound, no warning. It had vanished down the tracks like it had never been there. And then my phone buzzed. No signal, no bars, just one new message. I told you. I've been trying to find my way back ever since. There's no town nearby, no people. The tracks lead into the woods, but never seem to end. My phone battery never dies, but no one ever answers. Every time I try to leave, I end up back at the same platform. Sometimes when the fog rolls in thick enough, I hear the train, but I never see it. If you ever get that text, listen to it because I didn't, and I don't think I'm supposed to come back. The man in the security footage never blinked. He just stared down the aisle of the train, even though every seat behind him was empty. I've been a conductor on the commuter lines outside Chicago for almost 15 years. dealt with drunk passengers, power outages in the dead of winter, and once even a guy trying to jump between cars for a TikTok video. But none of that compares to what happened 2 weeks ago. It was a late Sunday night, past midnight, and I was closing out the final Red Line run. Call it the ghost shift because hardly anyone rides it. It's just the occasional night shifter or someone trying to sleep out of the cold. The train had left the downtown station on schedule. As usual, I did my sweep through each car to make sure everything was in order. When I reached the last car, I saw him. All passengers are supposed to disembark there. I made my usual call over the intercom, last stop. All passengers must exit the train. He didn't react. No acknowledgement, no movement. His eyes were locked forward, unblinking. Middle-aged guy, maybe late 40s, pale, like he hadn't seen the sun in years. He was wearing a gray hoodie pulled up over his head and jeans that were soaked at the cuffs. What struck me most was how still he was. No phone, no bag, not even a blink. Just sitting upright, hands on his knees, staring straight ahead. Entire trip. They agreed, and after we docked and powered down the train, I went into the control room. There's no one on that feed, man. Not a single soul. I was looking right at it, right at him. Car after car was empty until I got to the last one. I checked the bathroom, locked and unoccupied. Looked under the seats, then I just walked on, as if nothing was wrong. It's just nothing. Nothing. No bags, no jacket, no trace. Anyone had been there. I nodded at him, just to be polite. I'd seen him. I wasn't tired. I wasn't imagining things. I radioed the control center to double check. I asked them to pull up the onboard camera footage from that car. Creeped me out a bit, but hey, maybe he was high or just exhausted. I didn't press it. The ride was uneventful until we reached the end of the line Rosegate. Terminal. Motionless. Staring. I walked the length of the train again, just to make sure. The seat where the man had been sitting, empty. I paused, confused. His eyes, maintenance, said the electrical system in that car has been acting up. Lights flickering, doors refusing to open from the inside. Now I was starting to feel that prickly, irrational fear crawl up my spine. They called me back about 5 minutes later, quiet at first. Said he heard footsteps behind him in the last car. Turned around, no one there. And for a brief moment, just before the doors close, there's a figure standing in the doorway of the last car. Hey, are you sure you saw someone in car 6? Yes, why? Well, we're looking at the footage right now. The car's empty. I felt the bottom drop out of my stomach. I asked if I could see the footage for myself. They queued it up. There I was, walking down the aisle, pausing by the seat where he had been. Only, on the footage, there was no one there. My eyes were fixed on an empty seat. My lips even moved, like I was saying hello to no one. I watched the entire trip's footage, heart pounding. That seat stayed empty the whole time. No one entered. No one exited. That alone would have shaken me. But what one of the surveillance guys pointed out chilled me even more. Hold up, zoom in here, he said, pointing to a reflection in the window across from the empty seat. The frame skipped slightly as they zoomed. There, in the dim reflection of the opposite window, you could just barely make out. A figure, it was distorted, like a shadow where light shouldn't be. Blurry, but unmistakably human-shaped. Sitting in the same spot I had seen him, we all went silent. Another guy tried to joke, glitch in the matrix, but his voice cracked when he said it. Later that night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about the man's face. The next morning, I went back and pulled the entry footage from the downtown station just to confirm he got on the train. Nothing. Every platform camera. Every angle, no sign of him. But the worst part? At 12:03 a.m., right as the train was about to pull away, one camera caught something odd. A frame, just a single one, where the platform lights flicker. It's not stepping in, not moving, just standing. Same gray hoodie. Same soaking jeans. Face mostly hidden, except for the mouth. It was smiling, the doors shut. Next frame gone. That train car has since been taken out of service, but that's not why they pulled it. 2 nights ago, another conductor reported something strange. Final run of the night, except in the reflection of the window, a man, pale, hooded, sitting perfectly still. I've transferred off the Red Line. I won't ride after midnight anymore. And if you ever find yourself on the last train out of the city, and you notice the back car is empty, do not sit in it. Because the last passenger, he never got off. And and now he waits for someone else to see him. I thought I was alone in that train car until I looked out the window and saw him keeping pace with us, barefoot, smiling, and somehow mouthing my name. It was late October when I boarded the night train from Albany to Buffalo. I had a job interview the next morning, nothing exciting, just an office gig, but I couldn't afford to miss it. There is something hypnotic about watching trees blur past at high speed, long stretches of darkness interrupted by power lines. The occasional flicker of a distant house light or another train whooshing by on the opposite track. Not just the blur of passing trees, this was different. The train wasn't crowded. Most people were asleep, slouched under blankets or with their heads leaning against windows fogged with breath. I picked a window seat, slid my backpack under me, and stared into the black outside. After about an hour, the rocking motion had started to lull me into a light daze. When I noticed movement in the darkness outside, there was a man. He was running. His arms pumped in rhythm, like a sprinter's, but it was the speed that didn't make sense. He was keeping perfect pace with the train. His teeth looked wrong. Too many or too sharp, I couldn't tell in the dark, but I knew instantly that something was off. At first, I thought it was my imagination, just one of those weird tricks your tired brain plays on you. He was definitely there. I blinked hard, leaned closer to the glass. He was on the outside of the train, in the woods barefoot, wearing what looked like old, ragged clothing. I looked around the train car. Everyone else was asleep, pretending to be. I almost laughed. He hadn't slowed. I thought, okay, I've been awake too long. This is just stress, sleep deprivation, hallucination. And he was staring directly at me. My stomach dropped. You know that cold, prickling feeling that starts at your neck and crawls down your spine? He was mouthing my name. That's what hit me. I tried to look away. I thought maybe I'd fallen asleep, and this was a dream, but when I glanced back, he was still there. Maybe I'd dozed off for a second. Maybe it was a dream, still smiling. It wasn't a normal smile. It was too wide, too fixed. Then his lips moved. He was saying something. First I couldn't make it out, but after a few seconds, I realized ... Ethan. I jerked back from the window so fast, I banged my shoulder against the wall, but I couldn't shake the feeling. The wrongness of it. The man's eyes hadn't blinked. It was daylight now, and things felt more normal. I tried to laugh it off, telling myself again it was just exhaustion. I kept glancing at the window every few minutes, heart hammering. I didn't see him again. He couldn't have kept up with a train. Still, I had to prove it to myself. I turned back to the window. Nothing, just trees, rushing past in darkness. I let out a shaky breath, forced a chuckle. The train dipped slightly into a valley, and we passed a row of utility poles. The tapping stopped for a second, and started again. Then he was back, closer now. His face was almost against the glass. Slowly, I got out of bed and pulled the curtain back, screamed, loud. A few passengers stirred, and an older woman across the aisle blinked at me in confusion. "Are you okay?" she asked. I looked again. He was gone. I apologized, mumbled something about a nightmare, and she nodded slowly before turning away. I felt like an idiot, but I know what I saw. I didn't sleep the rest of the ride. At the station in Buffalo, I got off as fast as I could. But 2 nights later, in my hotel room, I woke up to a sound, a soft tapping. It was coming from the window, 8th floor. I froze in bed, barely breathing. Tap, ... tap, ... tap. Like fingernails on glass, I had to look. No one was there, just the city below. But on the outside of the window on the 9th floor was a single, smudged handprint. And underneath it, drawn in something I swear looked like dried blood, was my name. Ethan. I didn't sleep after that. I packed up and checked out of the hotel before sunrise. I never went to the interview. I never took a train again. And sometimes, only sometimes, I still see him, not for long. Just in the corner of my eye, reflected in a window, or across the street late at night. Always running, always smiling, and always mouthing my name. I didn't see her get on the train, but by the time we were halfway through the forest stretch, I realized she hadn't moved. It was just past 11 p.m. when I boarded the northbound train out of Chicago. I had a long ride ahead an overnight haul to Minneapolis for work. The train was mostly empty at that hour, the kind of emptiness that makes your own footsteps sound too loud. I settled into my seat by the window in car 6, tossed my bag on the floor, and tried to relax. Long, dark brown hair, pale skin, like she hadn't been outside in days. She wore a beige coat that seemed more suited for autumn than the biting January cold. She didn't have any luggage, not even a purse. I noticed her when we pulled out of the station, but the longer I watched, the more I realized something was off. She was in tea, leaning against the glass or slumped in her seat like most people do when they drift off. Her spine was perfectly straight, hands folded in her lap like she was posing for a portrait. Or high. Maybe she was watching her reflection in the window, or thinking something heavy. She was sitting across the aisle, in one row ahead seat for to be. She looked to be in her late 30s, maybe early 40s, and she was staring. Not at me, the window, you know how. At night, a window reflects the inside of a train better than the darkness outside. But in her window, there was no reflection. No lights, no seat backs, just pitch black. Her body was perfectly still. The train hummed on. The conductor's voice crackled through the intercom about our next stop, some tiny station in the middle of nowhere. Most of the car was empty by now. It's just me, her, and some guy snoring a few rows back. Confused, as if she'd just realized I was there. No shifting, no fidgeting, no blinking from what I could tell. Just staring into the dark blur of trees and snow whipping past the window. Her eyes didn't move. Her head didn't turn. At first, I thought maybe she was asleep with her eyes open, if that's even possible. About an hour into the ride, I got up to stretch and passed her on the way to the restroom. Wanted to laugh it off, ask if she was joking. But the way she said it wasn't a question for effect. It was genuine. She didn't blink. I'll admit it gave me a chill, but I told myself she was probably just weird. Maybe she'd said something else and I misheard. Just stared. Just once. And then turned back to the window. And the worst part? She looked just as surprised as I felt, like she was trying to figure it out too. When I came back, she was exactly the same. Another hour passed. That's when I noticed something. The glass where she was staring wasn't reflecting anything. I blinked, sat up straighter. I leaned forward to get a better look in. That's when she turned her head, slowly, like it took real effort. A woman walked by and sat 2 rows ahead of me. I looked back at seat 42B, but a week later, out of sick curiosity, I searched news archives for accidents on that route, and I found it. Her neck creaked as if it hadn't moved in hours, and then her face wasn't blank, it wasn't angry, it was something worse, curious. 2 years ago, a woman in her late 30s was among the fatalities. Her eyes met mine, and then she asked in a soft, cracked voice, "How long have I been dead?" I froze. Or the question. Or why my heart still hasn't stopped pounding every time I replay it. My throat dried instantly. "This car's been mostly empty all night," she wanted to know. I couldn't answer. She blinked finally, and just like that, stillness again. I should have gotten up, told the conductor, switched cars. Something. But I didn't. I stayed frozen for the next hour, watching her, trying to rationalize it. Maybe she was mentally ill. But then we arrived in Milwaukee. A few more people got on. Lights came on and it was empty. Not just empty. Seat cushion was flat, untouched. No indentation, no coat. She hadn't gotten up. I would have seen. I was staring the whole time. I stood and walked to the spot, reached out to touch the window. My reflection stared back immediately, clear as day. I asked the conductor if anyone had been seated there earlier. He checked the manifest. No one was assigned for 2B, he said. I told myself maybe she'd snuck on, but that didn't explain the window. I got to Minneapolis and didn't say a word to anyone. Terrain 2213, derailment. She was never identified. They listed the seat she was found in, as for to be, and now I keep wondering, when she asked me that question, was she talking to me? Or was she just starting to realize she never got off that train? The scream was raw, like someone being dragged down into something they could not escape. But when I dropped to the floor to look under the stall, there were no feet, just empty air. That scream kept going. It was late past midnight, and most of the passengers had either curled up in their seats or retreated to the sleeper cars. I couldn't sleep, probably from the vending machine coffee I'd chugged a few hours earlier. Eventually, nature called, and I made my way down the rattling hallway to the restroom in the back of the car. I was on the third day of a long cross-country train ride from Seattle to Chicago. It was the kind of sound that made the hair on your arms rise, that made your stomach clench. It was the sound of someone who was genuinely terrified for their life. The restroom door creaked when I opened it. It was a narrow space, slightly too warm, with 2 stalls and a cracked mirror above the sink. One stall was closed and locked. The other was empty. Didn't think anything of it. The lights flickered overhead, dim and yellow, casting weird shadows that swayed with every turn of the train. As I was doing my business, I heard it. A low sobbing sound, muffled, but definitely coming from the stall next to me. At first I thought someone might be sick, or maybe crying quietly. I paused, holding my breath, listening. Then it turned into screaming. Not yelling, screaming, desperate, panicked, guttural screams. "Hey," I said, knocking gently on the stall wall. "Are you okay in there?" The stall was locked, but no one was in there. And then, maybe someone climbed onto the toilet or stood on the seat. But the whispers continued, growing louder, curling into my ears like cold breath. The screaming didn't stop, it got louder. I backed away, confused and freaked out. My first thought was that maybe someone was having a breakdown. No voices, just the low mechanical groan of the train moving steadily through the night. Drugs, maybe, or something worse. I stepped out of the stall and moved to the door of the locked one, knocked again, harder. "Do you need help? I'll get someone." Suddenly, the screaming cut off. Just stopped. There was silence. For several seconds, the only sound was the hum of the train and the occasional rattle of the wheels on the track. Whispers. Faint, unintelligible whispers. Not coming from inside the stall, but from beneath it. Maybe someone had been messing with me. Maybe they'd climbed over or under the stall and bolted. But the layout of the restroom didn't allow that. The stall walls were steel, bolted edge to edge, no room to squeeze through. I hesitated, then crouched down slowly to look under the door. There were no feet, no shadow, no movement, just empty space. I sat wide awake in my seat, watching every face that walked down the aisle, wondering if any of them had been the one screaming or if anyone else had heard it. I froze. My mind raced for an explanation. That was when the door to the bathroom creaked open behind me. I spun around. Door's supposed to be jammed. We usually keep it locked. No one was there. Nothing. I stepped out into the hallway. The car was dead silent. All the lights were dimmed. No one passed by. No footsteps. I turned back into the bathroom, heart pounding, and grabbed the stall door. It was locked from the inside, but with one solid jerk it popped open. The stall was empty. Perfectly clean. No signs of anyone having been there. No shoes, no bag, nothing. I stood there, breathing heavily, trying to convince myself it was a trick of the acoustics. And I still couldn't shake the sound of that scream. It wasn't the kind you fake. It was the kind that comes from somewhere deep when you know you're not getting out. The next morning, I asked a conductor if anyone had reported an incident in the restroom the night before. He gave me a confused look and said, "No one's used that back restroom for years." I didn't say anything. I just nodded and walked away. But later, just before we pulled into Chicago, I passed that same bathroom again. The door was shut, and from inside, I could swear I heard breathing, deep and slow, like someone waiting.